That's where they're working, right?
Mass, like,
We're the lowest responsible.
well, I'm in the right lane anyway, but, and I tried to get a hold of someone at DOT, it was just a circus.
That's the one they're working on,
So I
right?
gave up, yeah,
Mm,
yeah,
I saw that day.
huge hole.
But they were there working, so.
Many had DOT contacts. It's just sitting down.
We're live, we're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The Franklin County IDA will meet first. And I'll ask Rachel if she'll do the roll call, please.
Sherry Bouye,
Here, present.
Jim Ellis,
Here.
Nate Manette.
Here.
Clyde Rabidou,
Here.
Nick Russell,
Here.
Scott Gordon, Melissa Mills are absent. Also present, Jeremy Evans, Paul Ellis, Rachel Karp, and Rachel Child.
We've established a quorum. Second item is to accept the agenda. Is there any changes to be made or additions? There being none, we'll move on to number 3, public comments. Any public comments? There being none, we'll move on to number 4, the approval of previous meeting minutes of June 11, 2025.
So moved.
Moved by Clyde. Second.
Well, second.
Second, Nick. All those in favor of adopting previous minutes or the previous meeting's minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Committee reports. Governance.
Nothing to report.
Audit and finance.
Nothing to report.
Very good. Okay, number 6, treasurer's report. Paul.
So you said the position be vacant.
This, thanks for covering that.
Paul, we're ready for treasurer's report.
Oh, we're talking. Treasurer's report, sir?
Oh,
Now that it is his job, he just totally lost.
I was trying to think, am I on IDA? If you can see, we're on
I
IDA.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really nothing to report. I will say Jeremy and I received a letter from DEC in regards to the brownfield at the former Bombay plant. The amount that they're looking for is far less than what was the auditors had originally estimated, but it's still a considerable amount of money. I think we're around 135,000. We're not just going to accept it. We're going to try to engage conversation with Dan Steck and Billy Jones to see about some flexibility in it. One of the challenges that exists is they do not recognize operating costs as a deductible amount from the amount that we owe them. Capital costs, they would. The thing that, my point of view is that we have not been operating the plant. We've been simply trying to put enough money into that property to keep it from going into complete disrepair. So the expenditures, in my mind, that we made were to retain the capital value of what we did have. So I think it's just going to take maybe a little bit of pushing and maybe we can get the amount reduced or entirely eliminated is our hope. In regards to the, since we're on the topic, the other Bombay warehouse that we owe, our own, previously, we've reported that we've had the property surveyed and sectioned off the water tower parcel from the warehouse parcel, and the intent would be to get the warehouse property sold. I think it's going to take some effort trying to have a conversation first with the town assessor, because the assessment on the warehouse is extremely excessive, and it would discourage any potential buyer. That's about it.
Very good. Have a motion to accept the treasurer's report. Motion to accept treasurer's report, Nick.
Yeah.
Second. Second, Nate. All those in favor of accepting the treasurer's report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both nay. CEO report.
All right, really quickly, just a couple things for the IDA. First of all, Brookside Solar Project in Chateaugay and Burke. We keep having discussions with the taxing jurisdictions. We don't have any agreement yet, but we're working to get to that point. Once we do, we'll schedule votes on potential consent resolutions, and I will let the board know if we get to some sort of tentative agreement. The other item is related to proposed contractual agreement between the IDA and the EDC. We talked about this last month as a way to have funding go to the EDC for specific projects and priorities that the board deems important. Harris Beach is working on a draft agreement. They gave us a number of questions for us to consider, such as we want an agreement that the fixed percentage of revenues go from the IDA to the EDC, and do we want it to be on like a 3 to 5 year agreement? And in both cases, we said yes, but obviously the board, I think that matches what we discussed. And so they're working on that, and as soon as I have a draft, I will share it with everybody, and hopefully we can consider it at our August meeting. That's my update for IDA.
Anything on uses?
The agreement will have general uses identified, but then beyond that, it'll be up to the board and the staff to come up with very specific uses and activities.
Good. Thank you. Do we have a motion to accept the CEO report? Motion to accept CEO report, please. Moved by Clyde, second by Nate. Or, excuse me, Nick. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Old business, our uniform tax exemption policy.
All right, so last meeting, we talked briefly about our uniform tax exemption policy. I shared with the board our existing policy. And then in front of, hopefully you have in front of you what is a track changes version. So what I did is I took our current policy and then did I wish it was redlining, but it's green lining, where there's things crossed off and some things added. And really, to summarize the proposed changes, let me just go through really quickly the proposed changes. The first is that the scale, there's no longer a scale of energy projects, renewable energy projects that we wouldn't consider. So we removed the 25 megawatt amount of capacity. We also upped the maximum term of the pilot term to 20 years, which is important for the larger projects. And then we changed the method of approval. So with the proposed changes, the board of directors can decide to approve a project after a public hearing and after getting input from anyone who chooses to make comments from that public hearing. To date, if there's a deviation on the policy, we require approval from the taxing jurisdictions. This would be changed to only the approval is not required. Now, what is added to how we look at deviations is a whole section on reasons we would consider a deviation. So this is, if you look on page 1, 2, bottom of page 3, where it talks about deviations. You see a whole section of criteria that the board would look at to determine whether it was worth making deviation. And so what do I mean by deviation? Let's say a project, we go through everything, we find a project that's good, and they want to, we say the maximum term you could have is 20 years. And they say, we really need 25 years. If they really need 25 years, that would be a deviation. And then the board would then use these criteria to decide whether the deviation was worth it to the community. Right now, we don't have any of these criteria for deviation. So this introduces a way for us to be more thoughtful about and justify a deviation. And so there's a number of criteria here. We're happy to take input on those criteria. I don't want to go through each one right now, but take a look at those and see if there's anything missing. The other big change, or it's actually not a change, but the other big question that is important, that's been brought up by Clyde and others, is how do we actually judge and be discerning about whether or not a project should require benefits at all? And he had suggested or hoped that we would provide some criteria in that regard. So, but what I think the answer to that I would recommend is that we be more diligent and thoughtful about documenting how the project meets the evaluation criteria that are already in this policy. So it's the second to last page where it says evaluation criteria. These are all the criteria that are already basically in our policy, but we haven't always given them the attention we should have. And so I think with the board highlighting this question on one and make sure we're fair and not giving out benefits to companies that don't need it, that we do, and it's basically a staff job, better job of kind of documenting how a project meets these criteria and then give that to the board for consideration. The only one I wanted to call your attention to, and because this also got brought up, I sent an email. Did it go to the whole board or just me? I don't remember. But regarding how do you justify providing benefits to one company in the community if there's another one just like it or something, and creating unfair competition? So it's a really good point, and that question actually spurred a good discussion amongst the staff earlier related to one of our programs in the EDC. But I want to turn your attention to number 13. And I want to see if we think this language kind of covers this, or if I need to kind of either expand it or add another criteria. It says, the extent to which the proposed project will provide a benefit, economic or otherwise, not otherwise available within the community in which the project is located. So that's already there. We probably haven't given it the attention that it deserves. I guess I wanted to just check and see if Clyde's concern is addressed in that section, or if it needs to be even more specific to this question of creating unfair competition. Any thoughts on that?
What's an otherwise?
To be determined, I guess, right? Like working with the company, they might say, well, we do this, that, and the other thing for the community. We have all these social benefits or something. And then we could either we can accept it or not, but at least I would ask the question. Sound reasonable?
Yep.
Okay.
It is.
So what I will do, and then the last thing is we also want to deal with housing. But over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of, been doing some research and having some discussions with people. What I would like to do, if it's okay with the board, is to move ahead with the changes that we have been talking about and go through the process of adopting them, holding a public hearing, but come back, but concurrently work on some future changes related to housing. Because I think it needs to be more thoughtful. And these other changes are more pressing. So I'd like to be able to just move ahead with this as is, but then have other discussions with the board about more specific things related to housing. I just think it's going to take some more thoughtful time to do.
And how would you catalog those?
It doesn't mean we cannot do housing. We can, but the way it's written. But I think there's a lot of good discussions that we have about whether or not we want to ever even consider supporting market rate housing, because you could, or you could say, you know what, we don't need to consider market rate housing. And there's variations in between that. So I'd like to just have some more time to present some questions and options to the board when it comes to some changes regarding housing.
So therefore, you're suggesting that we may want to adopt this today.
We cannot adopt it today because, well, I don't want to adopt it today because you're just seeing a draft.
Right.
And this is just discussion.
I wanted to make sure.
But I would like to get your go ahead to go to clean it up and then send it out for public comment. And then go through that process and then adopt it once we have public comment back, review it, and potentially adopt it at a future meeting, either in August or September.
I suggest that we're probably at a point of tabling this.
Yeah, it's not something for motion today.
Okay, but it's a draft,
It's a
which
draft.
we've considered, which we may want to say we'll table. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
Motion to table is in order. We have a motion to table, please.
I'll move it.
Nick? Clyde, second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of tabling, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I have to hear this because it's 2/3 to table. All those in favor of tabling, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion to table is carried. New business. Any new business? There being none, we'll move to executive session if required.
None
There
required.
being Absolutely none. Then we'll move on to the public comment. Any public comment? There being none, we'll consider a motion to adjourn with the date of the next meeting being August 13, 2025. Could I have a motion to adjourn the IDA, regular meeting of the IDA?
So moved.
Motion by Clyde, second. Second. Could I have a second? Nate,
Your turn.
all those in favor of
Yeah.
adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We good? Ready to move on to the EDC